Hello Mayhem Makers, I'm Mindy with Quilting Mayhem. Welcome back to another Summer Sampler 22 tutorial. We are working on block 5, which is called the Dutchman's Puzzle. I like this one, it's easy, it's really just flying geese. So you're just going to have rectangles, squares, we're going to turn them into geese and then lay them out and it makes kind of a fun, almost double pinwheel block. So let's get started. So I have a rectangle. And then on your squares, make sure you just draw your diagonal lines on the wrong side of the fabric. Pretty simple. Pretty sure we've even done these before. So you're going to lay one square on the rectangle. Make sure your diagonal is starting from the middle, going to the outside, and you're just going to sew on the drawn line. So get that going for you. And then we're going to trim a 1/4 inch away from that sewn line. I am using my 4.5 by 8.5 Creative Grid. I love this ruler, I really do. It lives here, it's well loved. One of my favorite parts is on one side of the ruler, it has a 1/4 inch marking. So I'm just going to lay it on there to trim. But for this block especially, it's got essentially flying geese markers here. So it's going to help me make sure that I have a 1/4 inch extra on that point. I'll show you what I mean in a minute, but let's get this thing pressed. And if you know me, if you followed my tutorials, you know most of the time I press my seams open, personal choice. Okay, so if you want to press one way or the other, generally I recommend pressing what they call to the dark side, or at least press one direction. But I find, especially with geese, I really like to have it open. I just find that my points come out better if it's a nice flat seam with them being open. So just spraying a little starch on there. It's a mixture, flatter, best press in water. It's my usual kind of mayhem concoction, 1/3 of each. All right, so first half looks like this. Nice flat seam. Now, this is what I'm talking about. Because the bulk is being evenly spread out, this point that we're going to end up in the end, it's not as bulky. So I feel like I just achieve a better point, and I'll show you. So now we're just going to do the opposite. So starting diagonal in the middle to the outside, going the other way. So this guy. Nice part about this so far is I'm not really having to worry about seam allowance yet, because I'm just sewing on the line. Trim my threads because it just bugs me. All right, so it's going to look like that. We're going to trim. You can be one of those people, you could keep all these guys, sew them up, and have a whole bunch of half square triangles and do something else with that. I have too much going on in my life to be going that next step of things, but who knows, you can make a fun little mug rug out of them, you know, if you don't want to be wasteful. I'm sure you could find all kinds of projects to do with those little guys. All right, so here's the point we're talking about. We want to make sure, the most important part of a flying geese, you have a 1/4 inch from the tip of that goose to the edge, because that's going to be in your seam allowance. So the nice thing with this ruler, if I can do it upside down in the video, look at that. See how nicely that shows up? If I'd straighten it out a little, there we go. So I can make sure that I have a 1/4 inch from the point to the edge. This is why I love this. It just has everything I need. All right, so you're going to make 4 flying geese that are one color, and then you're going to have 4 flying geese of another color. If you're following what I did in the kit, these are the colors you should have. Otherwise, do your own. Lay everything out so you make sure that you're getting your geese to do the pinwheel the way you want with whatever fabric. So lay them out, decide which one you want to be the main inner part of your pinwheel. And then all I'm doing is taking, I'll show you. So lay them like this, fold them on top of each other, right sides together, match those points. If you were a beginner, please pin those points because you want to make sure that your block doesn't have wonkiness. You want both ends to match. Otherwise your block's going to bow or it's going to warp outward, and that bowing or warping, it's just going to keep following you. So if you're a beginner and you wonder why maybe your quilts look a little wavy, lumpy, it's because you're not trimming, you're not making sure your points match, those kinds of things. You're not making sure that they meet at the beginning and end, and it's just following through. It just kind of keeps going, and it just gets worse and worse as you go. So you're going to make units that look like this. You're going to make 4 of these. We're going to press it. All right. I love this. So I have this wool mat. It's kind of keeping it nice and warm. Trying just to press downward, not a lot of pushing or shoving of the fabric, because that will also warp it. So just giving it a good steam, and then the wool it's holding on to that steam a little bit. So as it cools, it's just going to keep making those fibers nice and flat. So you're going to end up blocks that look like this. Then you're going to put them together like that. So notice one's up, one's sideways, because this is what's making your pinwheel. So whatever fabric you want as your pinwheel, that's what's going to be here as on the bottom, as you would put it, right? Because then we're just going to keep going as we lay it out. Ta-da! And have a pinwheel. All right, so what happens is you take 2, put them right sides together. The nice part of this is that one side's flat, one side has a seam, so you don't have to worry about matching in the middle. As long as you match your beginning and end, and you're going to get tired of hearing me about this, but please pin if you're new. If you're experienced, you've been doing this a while, you know how to keep your beginning and end points matching, so that's fine. But newbies, trust me, these were habits I was taught at the beginning, and I'm quite thankful of them now, because I was more successful in the beginning. I didn't get frustrated along the way. All right, so make sure you take that pin out. Don't sew over it. So to the other end, take the pin out. All right, so then we're going to have another trim. Okay, that guy up. All right, we're almost there. So if you haven't seen one of my tutorials, the whole reason for removing those pins, if you sew on one, especially if you sew really slow, the likelihood of actually running a pin over is higher. And if you break a needle because you ran over a pin and chunks of that needle go down in your bobbin system, in your hook system, bad things can happen. It can throw your machine out of alignment. You could throw your top needle bar out of alignment, so then nothing's going to work correctly, and then you're going to have to go look at the technician and shamefully say, I ran over a pin, my bad, please fix it, and pay money to have them put your baby back together. So we just don't recommend it. You can avoid it by just stopping right before that pin, taking it out. Okay, so we have 2 rows, looks like this. We're going to put them together, match this middle. Okay, this is why quilters end up with like threads everywhere. Because, when you use your body as a design board. Okay, so match that middle, match the beginning and end. All right, and then sew. Everything should line up nice and pretty. And we're almost there. So what I love about each of these blocks for the summer samplers, each one you could turn into a quilt. Like you're going to have a dozen different blocks that you could turn into a dozen different quilts besides the sampler. So if one of these blocks you just absolutely love, do it again. Turn it into a full quilt. You could have a lot of fun with it. So we're going to sew. Stopping at the middle. Taking that pin out. I'm just making sure the edges are lining up as I go. Pulling that last pin out. And also share your blocks, especially if you're not doing fabric that I'm doing. If you have a different palette, different choices of fabric, share them on our Facebook. Tag us in your Instagram. Just hashtag Quilting Mayhem, hashtag Mayhem Maker, embrace the mayhem. We have all kinds of fun taglines, but share them. I love seeing what you guys are doing. And knowing that you actually are, following along. Sometimes I do like a little validation of what I'm doing. And I love that we're a very sharing community. Quilters just love to share. So let's iron this guy. Making sure that center gets nice and flat, because that's where the bulkiest part of it's going to be, is right in the middle. Just make sure the center seam gets a good press. And I do like a lot of steam. I've always been a steam user. So you don't have to be. That's another personal preference. I'm not the quilt police. That is not something I will yell at you for using or not using. All right. And then that's what your block looks like. Yay! Right? So it makes this lovely pinwheel in the middle, and then you just have these geese kind of going around the outside. You can have all kinds of fun with this with different colors and fabrics. All right? So hopefully you're enjoying the sew along. Hopefully this tutorial helped you a little bit, and we will see you next week. Just keep on stitching.